Hey, thank you for tuning in to That Trucking Gospel, a podcast where we take a deep dive into the transportation industry and really dissect from an asset and a brokering side of the business, where we invite truth into transportation.
Long horns on the hood and I'm still gripping wood, still tipping, baby, sitting sideways. Texas heat on the candy paint, in and out of county lanes, baby, I love to swing. Find me posted on the corner with a couple cold Coronas and some outlaws out today. When we started, we were sober, baby, it ain't even over. They gon' have to drag us out this place. Yeah, it's different down here.
We are very, very excited. We are really, really selfishly looking forward to having these shows. A little bit on why we're even wanting to start That Trucking Gospel, why we wanted to start a podcast, and why we kind of wanted to co-host this thing. We teamed up. Robert already owns a couple of companies, a brokering firm, an asset-based company, and to be completely honest, we want to learn from our guests. We want to bring them on, ask questions, and then, selfishly even just get a lot out of it for us. And during that, why not broadcast that and let, our peers be able to learn from some of our guests as well.
That's excellent. We're going to school right here.
Yep.
So anybody that wants to critique us and anybody that has something to say, we're appreciative. The good, the bad, all of it. It comes with the nature of the beast. So we are excited to start kindergarten. Here we go.
Yeah, and we have a little bit of different experience and a little bit of different backgrounds. I've been in the industry for over a decade. Started my career out doing sales for a restoration company. Never really had the desire to get in the trucking industry. But in college, I had a roommate that was working for an asset-based, very large trucking company on the maintenance side. And at that time, they were struggling getting driver managers in there to work nights. And he's like, man, they got some positions open. You should really consider it. You don't even have to quit your job, work nights, work both positions. And so I did. I ended up applying for that. I ended up working there for a little over 4 years, but worked in nights. Then I became a driver manager, managing 50 drivers. And then I became a senior manager and kind of helped run a little pod. And then I became an operations manager that was managing 12 driver managers and over 500, 600 drivers. And then I became a senior operations manager that was helping manage the operations team. And then at that time, did a small shift in my career and started working for another company, went back to nights, working in line haul in an LTL company, and then decided that I wanted more. I really enjoyed sales. I kind of missed that role. So with the company I was working at, I ended up shifting my path, if you will, and went to do outside sales. So then I went down to Lafayette, Louisiana, and did sales there for about a year. And then I ran a service center down in Lafayette, Louisiana, a multi-million-dollar facility, was the service center manager for that location for over a year. Then I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, was a senior account manager there doing sales in Nashville. And then I ended up in the DFW market as a director of enterprise sales, more focused on, more the Fortune 1000 companies. So throughout my career, I had my hand in both the asset side and the asset light side, or the brokering side of the business, but most of my focus has always been on that brokering side of the business when I was selling. So, when I cross paths with Robert, my brother-in-law here, and we have these great conversations about his vision on how trucking should work, my vision on how trucking should work, sometimes, sometimes it butts heads, and I think that's for the better. So we've sat down, had some great conversations, and the expertise that I have and then the expertise that you've had for the last 10 years, we've had some great conversations, and we want to kind of bring that to a platform, to a podcast, to be able to talk about our experiences and then bring guests on to honestly, selfishly learn from them, because we've learned from each other, and man, there's plenty of people we can bring on to learn from.
Absolutely. And mine is not as complicated as that. Mine is pretty simple. The name of our carrier company is Prosperity Transportation, and the name of our brokering is Unity Brokering. And the reason why they are named those things is because we decided, me and my wife, that we wanted to start ministries and to minister to people through the businesses that God had called us to, and my dad used to have trucks when I was a little boy, and I used to ride in them trucks out to Houston to pick up containers and bring them back to Fort Worth. And one day came in life where he decided that he was going to surrender those trucks and he was going to become a pastor. So down that path, we didn't see trucks too much, but I'll tell you what, I dreamed about trucks and I thought about trucks all the time. And I made the sounds with my mouth and I drove them around, the house. And I got to sit back and really learn the truth of Jesus Christ. And through learning the truth of Jesus Christ, I wanted to implement those truths in a environment of trucks, So one day I got this, what my dad called a dumb idea, and I decided to buy 2 trucks. And I'll tell you what, that's where the battles began. It was very difficult. I can't say that I was equipped for it. I can't say that I was prepared or better than anybody else, but I'll tell you what, just going through all the stuff that we've gone through, I've learned so much, not only about transportation, but where truth is in transportation. And I think it's very important that we show people where the truth is in transportation so that they begin to follow those truths, because our nation, our economy, everything that we see is at a vital point right now. And if we don't begin to unify, we will never have that prosperity that God, has for us. And luckily there's a promise in the word that says that we're going to have it no matter what, and that's kind of what we're doing here is our preparation to receive of that, to be people of influence, to be able to help a lot of these companies and these people out that, maybe we don't have what you guys have. Y'all might have those other pieces of the puzzle, but one important part of the puzzle, if you don't have, we might have, and that puzzle to us is truth. It's Jesus himself and what he's done for us, and God sending his son to die on the cross, and that he was risen and that he no longer is dead and he's alive and he's in all of us. And if we begin to rely on who he is in us, we'll begin to see a different outcome in transportation, in the world, politics. I know we're not supposed to bring up politics, but I'm going to bring it up, so that's really my hope and my desire through it all. Like, do I love to get into trucks and get greasy and build, some nice Peterbilts and maybe set up some wet kits with some dump trucks? Absolutely. But more than anything, I love to long after the Father, and I love to serve him. And I believe that he's willing to meet the people right where they're at. And if we give him an opportunity to move through this avenue like we're doing, we're busy people, Chris.
Tell me
we're
about
busy
it.
people, and we've already set up a couple episodes and setting this up. Everything's trying to get in the way. It's not coincidence that everything's getting in the way, but at the same time, we got to continue just to press forward.
That's right.
And we got to really, one thing Chris said earlier, he goes, man, we got to really find a way to keep the gospel in this podcast. And I went to my scripture of the day, and the first thing that it says similarly, a family splintered by feuding will fall apart. Mark 3:25. That's the New Living Translation. We are a trucking family, brokers, carriers, and there is feuding amongst it all, just a blame game, pointing the finger at each other.
Right.
If we don't begin to set ourselves in a position of peacemaking, this whole thing I believe it's going to collapse a little bit before it gets better. But at the same time, I want to be at the front of the line, because there's a promise for those who rely on the message of truth and on who Jesus is. And I'm just sticking with that promise, because at the end of it, you can't do nothing without the Father. That's what the word says. And that's what I've learned through the last 10 years.
Yeah, and you hit on some things that excites me, because we talk about, Prosperity Transportation being an asset-based company. We talk about Unity Brokering being a brokering firm that focuses on, the customer and carrier relations. But at the end of the day, all that coming together to still build a great relationship with the customer, right? That's so if you have a good relationship with a customer that doesn't quite understand the pain that we're going through or the heartaches that we're going through, and if you don't have a great relationship with that customer to say, hey, having a great relationship with this carrier is important and this is why, and then vice versa, having a great relationship with the carrier to put into, it's weird. A brokering firm, the face of your company is a driver that you've never met before, that may own his own truck and shows up and could have a bad day. So if you don't marry up the relationship with that customer and the relationship you have with that carrier on the brokering side, it's a dumpster fire. So then when you look over on the asset side, you have a relationship with that carrier because you are the carrier. It's your driver. He comes to work every single day, to provide for his family. So then you only have to focus on the customer. So these are being fun conversations about when is it important to have an asset-based company drive your supply chain? When is it important to have a brokering firm drive your supply chain? And then ultimately the answer is to have both. And so what's really going to be fun with this is, back to what you're saying is, the feud that you were just talking about between the industry and where the rates are right now, or the customer driving down the rates, or the carrier saying you're not paying me enough money, or all that comes into play. That if the way that we like to do it is, keep our faith, understand that we're putting to a place where we're supposed to be at this particular moment and season in our life. And right now for us, that's oddly enough, that's trucks. It's like, this is where God's called us to be, because you have feuding inside the industry. You have feuding outside of the industry, feuding in the government, feuding in, it feels like every time you turn around, all we see is some type of feuding. So you have feuding in the industry, you have feuding outside of the industry. And then what we focus on every day is, hey, God wants us to be here at this place, at this time, in this season in our life. Focus on the good, find the joy in everything. Everything else is going to work itself out.
So when I first met Chris, yes, I had a broker's license already. I didn't use it much as we do now. We're using it more. But my whole thought was, because I was carrier first, was let's get rid of all brokers. This was
burn them down.
That was my thought, and through a little bit of time, and opening my ears, and opening my heart to understand, getting out of the way, and thinking that I knew better or best, I came to a conclusion that both are necessary in the market, and both help the customer depending on what type of strategy the customer is trying to achieve.
But see, we focus on things a little different though too, where I don't want to live on the broker board. I'd rather have a great relationship with my carrier base. So all the things you were talking about being an asset-based company, I have the same thing. And let me explain that, because it's different, but it's the same. So you're talking about having your drivers, your fleet show up, specialized equipment, so on and so forth, right? But if we have a carrier operations floor that is focused on just the carrier, so not the customer, their job is to make sure the carrier is taken care of, making sure that carrier has everything that he or she needs to be successful. What happens is you start building that relationship, and that relationship gets so deep, they want to come back and work with you again tomorrow. They want to come back and work with you again next week. Well, hey, I have a customer that needs specialized equipment. Could you position yourself to do that? And I could give you more freight. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So what happens is, if you have a carrier sales floor that focuses on the carrier and makes sure that he or she has the right information to make them successful, the rates that they need to be successful because they come back, there's a happy medium between making sure the customer gets the best rate possible and making sure the carrier gets every single penny he needs to be successful, because I want he or she to come back and work for me again tomorrow. I would argue that I take more pride into making sure that carrier's taken care of It's kind of like the Steve Jobs theory. If you take care of your people, they're going to take care of your customers. It kind of works like that in the brokering firm too. If you take care of your people, which for us, the people that's actually working is the carrier. If you take care of the carrier, then ultimately they're going to take care of your customer, because the customer only, I mean, I say this loosely, there's a lot of reasons, but the customer cares about speed to market, the price, making sure it gets there intact, and then make sure that their end user, their customer, is satisfied. But who does all that? It's not even me, the broker. It's the carrier. It's the carrier that meets all of that. Yep. They're setting the price point, as you already, even if it's low, they're setting the price point.
Well, nowadays market, on the broker board, yes, they're setting the price point. But if you're working with certain customers, they're setting the price points.
Yep. No, that's right. That's right.
How did this even happen? Has this been like this forever?
It's a feast or famine. Yeah, we're in a natural reset right now. Right now it is a shipper market. Mm-hmm. The shipper kind of gets to dictate that. The carrier doesn't have the leverage that they did back in COVID, because right now there's more loads. There's more carriers than there are loads. So what happens is you have all these carriers just fighting and chomping at the bits to almost cut each other off at the knees, because they're just trying to provide for their family. They need to make a buck today. They're in survival mode. Yeah. I just need to make it work today to get to tomorrow and hope the industry kind of fix itself. Hopefully it resets. Hopefully
and what that ends up doing, it ends up cutting out small fleets like us, because we can't compete with that. We can't compete to get by.
Well, your costing structure is different, right?
It's more expensive.
If I just have one truck, I have a set fixed rate on that truck. I'm trying to cover that cost plus something to feed my family. And it's pretty simple. It's a simple box. Mm-hmm. This is what I have to cover. This is what I need to make. Well, when you start adding to your fleet, there's a lot more variables that come into play, right? Especially when you talk about driver turnover, which has always been a huge thing in the trucking industry. I used to work at a company a long time ago that their turnover rate was 350%. They had to hire 3.5 drivers in hopes to keep one in the seat every week. So they're bringing 4 or 5 people in.
The average for the industry is 100%.
It's crazy, isn't it? So when you talk about a guy that owns one truck, one driver, he ain't worried about turnover. He ain't worried about training cost, because he's it. He's the guy. He's the man. He's the one. So maybe he gets one truck for his son or brother, whatever, but it's small fleet, right? But when you start getting to that 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15, 100 trucks, the bigger you get, no longer more money, more problems, right?
Yeah, no longer are they 1099s. Now they're W-2s.
Yep.
Now you have to have workman's comps. Now.
Let's not even talk about insurance.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're having to fix and train these drivers because the industry's not, or the schooling and stuff they're going to is not training them properly. And then I work in construction.
Right.
It's not like driving on the pavement. We're literally building the roads.
Right. You'll never run over a nail and bust a tire.
Boy, how many nails and brand new tires that go bad because of the industry we work in, yeah. And the rate is going to reflect those things, but
so we continue to find joy. You continue to put, this is where God has me today. But what's going to be great about this podcast, and I know we kind of tangent off a little bit, but this is what I'm excited about, because I have an opinion on how I feel like things should work and how I feel. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know when the industry is going to flip. I don't want to speak for you, but you have an opinion on how the industry should work from an asset-based perspective and maintenance and whatever. But man, I am pumped about bringing some of these guests on.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And learn from them. And we're going to try to kind of dabble in a few different topics early. We're going to be very customer and carrier driven here, but at the same time, I want to know what the industry looks like. We already have a guest lined up to talk about the maintenance side of the business and shifting to EV by the year 2035. Still blows my mind that's a thing. We already have guests to kind of talk about just more of that customer satisfaction and making sure the customer's getting what they want. We have guests lined up that's going to talk more focused on the carrier and why they're the most important thing in the business. And then ultimately, we're just going to sit back kind of learn, listen, and then, and hopefully, and I know we will, but get some education from it, and then, pass that on to you guys and allow you to, kind of tap into the knowledge that we're getting. In addition to that, we really hope you guys leave a lot of comments and feedbacks of what you want to talk about, what you want to learn from, because that's the idea of the podcast, right? We want to take something out of it. Maybe you're on your way to work and you're just listening to us, or maybe
what these people are bringing are testimonies.
Yeah.
That's what they're bringing. They're bringing stories of things that they have been through, and we're going to compare them as well with our stories. We're going to co-sign with our stories, and at the end of the day, we're going to try and bring, the understanding of what's been here for 6,000 years.
Yep. A couple of our guests have already been in the industry for 40 something years.
It don't be 2,000 for Jesus. So I'm kidding. No, for real. Some of them are so wise, and they haven't even been in the industry for long.
That's right.
I mean, she was young, and she's very intelligent when it comes to brokering and the industry and customer care and all that stuff. And I'm over here. I couldn't really even say much because I was learning the whole time. I felt like I was watching a podcast, not on a podcast.
Yeah. Well, wow. Here's the thing though, is you've always heard the term like stay in your lane, right? Mm-hmm. Like you have a job to do, like do your job. What are you good at? What are you, what passion do you have? And in trucking, like I've learned over the years, but I'm really starting to learn through this podcast that it doesn't matter what experience you have, or you're 40 years in the industry, 5 years in the industry. If you have passion for something and you're good at something, for example, social selling, mm-hmm. man, you're a force to be reckoned with. And I want to learn from you. I'm not going to let that experience blind me from the fact that this is your niche. This is what you are great at.
Correct.
And then you flip that to somebody that has 40 years in experience. It's kind of like listening to my grandpa. Like if you sit around a campfire, if his mouth opens, there's something very important fixing to come out of his mouth. Like it's something you can learn from. Mm-hmm. Same thing with a guy who's been in the industry 40 years. When he's talking, I'm just like, man, he's got more knowledge in one finger than I have maybe ever, because this thing only can hold so much. But that's another thing too that I'm just really excited to focus on in this podcast, is just bringing people on to talk about what you guys want to talk about, the topics you want to talk about, and learn from them.
Absolutely, bringing peace to a place of chaos. Yeah, everybody in the industry is hurting right now.
Yep,
everyone. There is some places that are still thriving, and those are people that ship their own commodity, and they have control over all of the freight. But if you are strictly just in the freight business, you're hurting right now.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about our companies. Let's start with Prosperity Transportation, and then we'll move over to Unity. But Prosperity. You started 9 years ago, has 15 trucks ish that fluctuates a little bit, focuses more on that flatbed, heavy haul, in dumps. So, right now the industry, the way it is, in the vision you have for your company, like what are you looking for? What do you, with everything that's going on, what's the future look like for Prosperity? Like what has God told you right now? Like, hey, this is what I want you to do with this, because again, you've already said it, but I want to echo it. Yes, it's a company that's called Prosperity. Yes, it's a company that's called Unity, but it's a ministry for us.
Yeah. I think that I want to be an example in the industry of whatever comes. So one thing I've always done is I've taken the harder path in life, and it wasn't very popular to buy your own trucks and to invest in the assets when you could be in an asset light business and make more money. Right now, our asset light business makes more money than our actual asset business. You have way less expense. Way less liability. That's just the transportation realm that we live in right now, right? So I do think there's a shift coming where that's going to end. I think assets are going to be key. I think that, I've been watching a lot of things happening geopolitically. And the dollar is not doing very well. And all these things that happen on the news and they put all over Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and stuff, that all stuff is just made to distract you, because there's some serious things taking place with the dollar, and they've been taking place for a whole decade already. And if we don't begin to, think and align ourselves that way, then we kind of are not going to be prepared. So the reason that I went asset is because I believe tangible assets, physical things you can touch, are going to be of value here in the very, very few coming days. So I would like to sell the whole fleet, bring in lease trucks with owner ops, run the logistics company, and invest there, and maybe I got my dealer's license, so I'm going to start flipping, trucks. I'm going to start buying and selling used trucks. But I can't give up yet, because I've been holding on to this thought or this theory since I had one truck.
Yeah.
And God had given me that understanding, and I continue to invest, and supernatural miracles took place for me to have, 25 trailers and 15 trucks now.
Yeah.
Within no time, like 5 years?
So what do you think sets apart an asset-based company? Like what makes this, no, I just mean like asset-based company versus asset-based company. Like what sets you apart from say some of our peers that have 15, 20 trucks as well? Like what do you think the key to success is on a fleet your size to make sure that you're still customer centric, to make sure the customer's taking
humility?
Care of?
That's what I found that sets us apart. We're able to stay in the situations that we're in, because even if you're right, it doesn't matter if you're right.
Right.
None of that matters. If you're wrong, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're right. What matters is that we continue to humble ourselves and move forward, and understand that you don't have to be right all the time.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, time, that's one thing I love about time. Time tells the truth. So through time, all these things that you were saying will come to pass if it was the truth. If not, it will not come to pass. Right. So those are the type of things that I think set like a company just like ours, built the same way, apart, is humility. And it starts with the leaders up top, not always having to be right. When you have that type of power and you have that type of control where you can, throw it around everywhere, choosing not to use it. Humbleness is not thinking of yourself any less. It's just thinking more of others. So if you think of yourself very highly, which you should, you need to begin to think of others right above that. And if you continue to elevate yourself of how you think of yourself, then you're elevating others at the same time. So, man, I've been through some stressful situations where I didn't want to humble myself. I wanted to slap somebody.
Yeah.
I wanted to give up. I wanted to quit.
So, again, from just thinking about assets and having that, more variables of things that could happen, it just makes me really think about the maintenance side of the business. I feel like if you don't have your maintenance in line, you may not even have a trucking company. Is that fair to say?
I think so, but that part comes natural to me.
Yeah. Somebody doesn't come natural to.
Okay, that would be different. So that would be like I've been fixing stuff. I was the 9-year-old that my neighbor put a lawnmower on the corner of her yard to throw away. I went and grabbed it, rolled it home, fixed it, cut her yard for $30 with it, and sold it back to her for $100. So that side of the business,
I'm a hustler, baby.
You know what? Now that you say that, Chris, I'm thinking about it, and yeah, maybe that's what's got.
That's why you like that asset side of the business.
Yep. Something breaks, let's fix it.
Yeah.
And I like fixing it, and I like to fix things fast too. One thing I'm real proud of. I had a driver overheat one of my C15s, Caterpillar engine, and it pulled in on a Tuesday on a wrecker into the shop. Next Tuesday, we fired it up and pulled it out the shop. In 1 week, we completely did a full overhaul on the truck. But I was passionate that I was going to do it as fast as I can. Yeah, it was going to cost me $20,000 in parts to do it. Gosh. But if I could get that truck back on the road, because it was a busy season, that truck could revenue $7,000 a week.
Yeah. And it's
In a
got to
good
be
week.
fixed. So might as well do it now.
Yeah, why cry about it and let it take a month?
Yep.
Then fix it in 1 week, and in the next 3 weeks it makes you back that gross revenue.
And see, that's what, when I think about an asset-based company and I think about the term like customer obsession and customer centric, like that's what you bring to the table though. You have an issue on a load, you have an asset to go recover it. You have an issue on the road, you have a maintenance team that's ready to go. You have an issue on the road, it's not like, oh no, what happens next? You already have a plan in place to be able to overcome it, to where, on the broker side of the business, if you have a truck broke down, it's a little bit of a panic mode. Like, hey, are we going to ride this thing out? We're going to, hey, let's get an ETA from the shop that you probably are just checked into, that you've never met before, that you don't have a relationship with.
You said maintenance, and it's very humbling for the owner to be a part of the maintenance and working on trucks. So I think they go hand in hand together, so I think you're right, is maintenance can separate you.
Yeah. And I just, the time I've known you, and like a lot of your focus goes on the maintenance side of the business, because that's what separates you, in my opinion, from an outsider's view.
I think you're right.
Your maintenance team separates you from our peers. You guys are fantastic, right? But you put a lot of time, a lot of effort. Hey, do your PMs, do your post trips, do your pre-trip. Hey, get this thing in line, because this is our livelihood. Where, on the broker side of the business, we don't have to focus on that as much. It's more of relationships and selling and customer satisfaction. And it's not, but all that stuff I just talked about on the asset side of the business comes from maintenance in your trucks, making sure making sure that equipment's ready to do what the broker needs us to do. And in your case, if you don't use a broker and your customer freight, but that's the exact same thing I'm saying in a different realm. Over here, I'm talking about almost words like, hey, let's execute. Over here, you're doing it on the maintenance side before, to make sure that you can execute.
Yeah. I heard somebody tell my wife one day, we were getting into the trucking business and they were coming out of it. And she said, if I can warn you about anything, it's maintenance. She says, the price of maintenance is so high. Like, we would make money and we would take the truck into the shop and the bills were so high that we just couldn't keep up with it. And at that point, I decided in my heart that would not be me.
Right.
So I learned everything about a semi truck and trailer, to where when I would go somewhere and they would try to pull the wool over my eyes, they'd try to make me look like I didn't know.
Hey, this spark plug costs $3,000.
Right? Spark plug in a diesel motor or engine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm that guy that calls it a motor and not an engine. I apologize for all you critics.
Yeah. We're going to cut that out anyway. So
yeah, they couldn't get me. There's just not a way that you're going to tell me to replace something that doesn't need to be replaced. A lot of owner operators are taking their trucks, and fleet owners, to shops, and they're replacing things that do not need to be replaced. And that will eat up all your money. Yeah. Right now, there's a lot of money in mechanics.
Yep. Which ultimately comes straight off of the revenue that your company's making and your profits, which means somebody has to pay for it. And a lot of times that reflects back to the customer. It's like, they're helping pay the bills, but if my cost gets higher, my rates need to kind of stay in line with that. If cost goes up, rates have to go up. I mean, on an asset-based side, right? So the best you can do to keep your costs down is something else that can set yourself from your peers. And so from a customer perspective, when I'm trying to make a decision of when to use a broker, when to use an asset-based carrier, I mean, there's 50 different ways that I can answer that, but what we just talked about is a small glimpse of that. Like, brokers seem to have a bad rap of, drivers falling off, not having the customer service levels that we need to have, horrible communication, because there's so many hands in the pot, right? So a lot of these companies that focus on, hey, I'm only going to use an asset, that's where that comes from, is you communicate well. Your trucks are serviced. I know your drivers. We know if something happens, you're going to overcome it very fast. To where in the industry, the brokers kind of have a bad rap. So, at Unity, one thing we focus on more than anything else is, how can I be a asset light, non-asset based company, a broker, but give you the exact same feel as an asset based company would do? What sets me apart from you? And, we're in the people business. People want to do business with people, but at the end of the day, you still have to service the customer at a high level. So where does that come from? Focusing on the carrier, making sure that you're getting the right guys in there to pick up the freight for that particular customer, making sure that you have such a great relationship with the customer. We're getting all the information we need to be successful, where they've struggled at in the past. And I would love to never, ever, ever put a load on the broker board. If I can keep a load off the broker board, I did my job correctly.
Correct.
That you have the right carrier in place. And at our firm, we want to try to be pretty balanced when it comes to contracted rates and spot rates. So when you go and sit down in a bid and some type of RFP, and you can bring these, because as you already said, 80% of the industry is an independent owner operator. When you talk about 80% of the capacity, that's huge. Yeah. But if I can go sit down at a table, fixing to do an RFP with 80% in my hand and say, hey, these are the drivers that want to work in these lanes, and this is the rate we're willing to do it for, we're going to execute at such a high level.
What do we do, though, because that costs more? The truth of the matter is that it costs more. How do we compete? How do you tell the customer, man, this is the way? Well, they're like, no, we need this rate, though. Mm-hmm. And then you bring them, load board trucks that are just hopping from the next great. They're like.
But what do they value? That goes back to that relationship I'm talking about. What do they value? If they only value price, okay. If you have a higher cost structure and they only value price, you're not going to be a good fit for them anyway. And you're not going to be a good fit for everybody.
Correct. Yeah. Not all freight's good freight.
So I am a firm believer in there's a book called The Three-Legged Stool. I read a book. All right. So let's not get into that. I've read 3 in my life, and Three-Legged Stool is one of them. No, I'm just kidding. But Three-Legged Stool is the mentality of you have to have, value 3 different things to keep the stool standing. And if you take one of those legs away, what's going to happen? Stool's going to fall, right? Mm-hmm. So what does that customer? So in this instance, what does that customer value? Price, speed to market, service, whatever those 3 things are. If you take something away, you're not going to be successful. So if the customer comes to you and say, man, I've got to have an expedited service, extremely fast. I need 99% on-time pickup. I need a less than 1% claims ratio, whatever those things are, and they bring to the table. But then at the end of the day, say, but I want it cheap as possible. That's like you going to a car dealership and saying, I want,
King Ranch.
Yeah. I want,
alloy wheels,
all these things that in a package and bundle, but I want it at a
XL price.
Come
on.
But that's why when you're going into and sitting down with a customer and customers that are listening, this is why it's very important that you actually have a working relationship. You actually have in-depth conversations about your supply chain. It's not just a customer that's hiring a provider, because you can do that all day long. There's brokers on every corner. There's not asset-based companies on every corner, but there's a broker on every corner that can go sit down at a table and say, it don't matter what mode you have, I can take care of that for you. Yeah. But that's not what sets us apart. How am I different? What sets me apart? Well, 1, I'm in the people business. 2, I actually care about your success. And then let's have, deep conversations. We want to do business with each other. I'm pretty much, if you put broker on one hand and a broker on the other, for the most part, they're sourcing the exact same capacity. It's the same trucks. When you look at a truck coming out of I don't know, Texarkana, Arkansas, we're not going to be sourcing capacity out of California or out of New York. We're going to be sourcing capacity in and around Texarkana. All the brokers are.
And 85% of them are going to 5 different places to get the load where you're posting it.
That's right. So if I'm competing against another broker, The only thing that sets me apart is the way that I try to operate and do business, and ultimately me as the sales guy, because I'm guaranteeing you this is how we do business. This is how we service our customers. This is the relationship. So what sets me apart is if there's 15 trucks, I'm just making up a number, sitting in Texarkana, Arkansas, but I have a great relationship with one of them that works with me every single week. That's just like having an asset. They care about my business because I've gave them a lot.
Correct.
They care about the customer business because they're going to be in Texarkana again next week.
Which is rare.
Yeah.
That's rare in the market today, to find carriers that are teamed up with brokers like that.
Yeah, but a carrier's not going to do it. You have to pay somebody to sit behind a desk and go sell it.
So it's the broker that needs to do it.
Absolutely. And that's what doesn't happen because that's a cost. Remember how we keep talking about keeping our costs low? Most people, most brokers, and I can't speak for all of them, most have a cradle to grave model. They post it on the board and they're just waiting for trucks to come to them. I don't like that model. That doesn't necessarily take care of the customer. Can we be successful? Absolutely. We can be successful. Everybody does it every day of the week. But what sets yourself apart
Not 2019 though.
You have a guy sitting behind the desk and his job is to build a carrier pool, have relationships, understand what lanes they want to haul in, what type of equipment they have. I don't like hauling for this customer because this, and this. Well, we're never going to put you in that customer because that sets us up for failure as well. So understanding that he's going to have a pool of carriers that he wants to do business with. So as our sales team brings in all these different opportunities, this carrier operations person is sitting here just mapping it out, putting the pieces together, because we have a profile on every single driver that works for us, every single customer that says, this is where I want to be. This is the lane I want to haul in. I love to be between Dallas and Los Angeles every week. I want to run it. I have customers coming out of LA into Dallas and love to have it going back.
You know what's so crazy too, Chris, is that the regional trucking is completely different than local.
Yeah.
Trucking. Because local, it's all about consistency.
Yep.
Like, I don't care if you want that load or not. You got to do that load if you want to be consistent, and through the consistency is where you make your money, because there's not, you're having to burn and turn loads 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 a day, where regional, I mean, you're putting a load on your trailer and you're driving for 3 days.
Yeah.
And then you're loading up another one and coming back, you're done for the week with 2 loads.
Yeah, you got local, you got regional, you got over the road. You got that. I mean,
is it regional over the road?
So regional is going to be more like trying to stay in Southeast region, right? 200, 300, 400 miles outside. Yeah. Over the road, OTR, long haul. That's those ones going from, Dallas to California.
And that's where you were more invested in that, right? You were running longer accounts.
Yes, I was more regional and long haul freight. Very, very did not dabble much into
where I've done a minimum
local.
Of that, and I've done all local.
Yeah, 80-mile load, 70-mile load. Come back to the customer again 2 or 3 times a day. It's a different mindset. It's a different. It's a different. Cause you're okay with going 80 miles and not looking for a deadhead back because your customer's sitting there waiting for you to give you the next one. Where if you're a regional driver, over the road driver, you end up in Dallas and you get a 250-mile load, they're not going to deadhead 250 miles back to get that because it's not guaranteed. They're already looking for something else to potentially to spread their wings a little bit and get outside the market and regional. But I mean, yeah, these are the type of conversations this podcast is going to bring. But we're going to start really narrowing that conversation into certain topics, being very customer driven. And ultimately the idea is, how do you take an asset-based company? How do you take a brokering company, marry those up to where at the end of the day, the customer is getting exactly what they need? That's the idea. Because I'm telling you, I've been there. I've sat in negotiating tables that said, I'm sorry, sir, we're only willing to work with asset-based companies.
Yep.
Well, try to sell through that when you're not ready, right? Like, well, why? And you can explain that. And then on the flip side, you have these guys that are, they work with 300 brokers at the same time, and it's all about
and
price.
For the customer, the best thing is to work with brokers and asset-based companies,
Yeah.
but mainly brokers that have asset-based companies as sister companies like us.
Yep. But that goes back to what I'm saying is if you have a sales team member that builds a good relationship with the customer and you have multiple avenues to sell, nobody loses.
Yeah.
Nobody loses because you're putting success. It's kind of like, it's kind of like the idea of, hey, meet me where I'm at. That's what you're doing. If you need assets, we got it. If you need a brokering firm, we got it. But at the end of the day, we're in the people business, doing business with people, and they just want to see people be successful and succeed. So set yourself up for success, have good relationships, have good conversations, and then ultimately, no matter if you're asset or broker, it's all about how good your operations team is.
This is true.
Execute. So anyway, Robert, I can't speak for you, but I think I can. I'm really, really excited about the vision of that trucking gospel, the future of unifying for prosperity, right? And man, selfishly, I'm really, really excited about the guest lineup that we have. But
I can't wait to see what's coming. I know that these are the beginning, like planting a seed.
Yep.
We're sowing a seed right now, and we're sowing it in you guys, which is the ground, your guys' hearts, and the environment. If it's not here, it's definitely on the way. 2024, baby. And I think that as we continue to move through this year, I think the sound that's coming out of our mouth is going to resonate in your hearts. And I think that it's going to be edifying to some people, and it's going to bring unity and prosperity to customers, that really, really need, people that are willing to separate themselves from the fighting and the always pointing the finger and saying, what can I do to become better? So that's what I'm most excited about is what's coming.
Yeah. We're going to do our best to keep nothing out of our mouth or anything coming out of our mouth wholesome. Thank you, Ephesians, for that. But we are in the trucking industry, and there are some trials and tribulations that we go through, and we're going to have some shows about that as well, about how to overcome and some of the speed bumps, if you will, pun intended, for our industry. And so seriously, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I really hope we get a bunch of feedbacks and comments. I want to hear about topics that you guys want to talk about, because selfishly we're doing this for us to learn from our guests, for us to get better, and ultimately have a better customer satisfaction. But if you can give some topics on what you guys want to talk about, our production team will definitely work on getting some of those guests on too.
And if you want to be a guest, hit us up on our email. We would love, to see what you have, and to see your perspective on things. And especially if you obtain truth in transportation.
There it is. I don't know if we said that yet.
I don't know if we said it, but there it is.
That's the goal.
If you have some truth that you would like to expose in transportation, this is the platform to get it out.
Yep. So. And where can they find us? What platforms are we on?
We're on Facebook. We are on X, the old Twitter. Thank you, Elon.
Yeah.
We are
so all platforms across
every platform. YouTube. What's another one? Instagram, LinkedIn.
Yep.
So, and mainly, like Chris said, the brokering side, they're focused on the carriers. We're a carrier. We're focused on the customer. Yeah. So you customers, holler at us. We need some freight,
We're all focused on the customers. We're all focused on the customers.
No, so. Yeah, that is
but no,
true.
Thank you so much. Again, tune in on any platform that's social media platform, all podcasts. We're going to kick out a show every Tuesday. And, with this show, we'll start kind of giving you an idea of what the next 2-3 weeks looked at. We're pretty excited. Like I said, we already have a bunch on the books, and we're looking forward to it. So thank you again, and we appreciate you guys.